The world of crime and punishment is a grey one. Sometimes there will be documented criminal activities that have been made public and no legal recourse for victims. Sometimes a criminal walks free because of a technicality or blurred lines of ethics in the legal world. But once in a while, some criminals face justice even though it may be too little, too late. This is Prime Crime, a WION special series. I'm your host Dharamjot Kaur. Welcome to the show.
I think it's really time for the country to get onto something else. Now that nothing came out about me.
I therefore invoke my right to silence under the Fifth Amendment to the US Constitution.
It has been less than 2 weeks since America's Justice Department released over 3 million pages from the infamous Epstein Files. Even as we speak, congressional lawmakers across party lines are pressuring the DOJ to unredact more information. The victims and accusers of Jeffrey Epstein are fighting their own battle. They say that the administration has not released all the files yet. There are more in the dossier, and they allege it has even more damning information. Since January 30th this year, when the files were released, there has been a lot of talk about who all are in those files, the rich and the powerful. The horrendous photos of them with victims of sex offender Jeffrey Epstein and his so-called clients. But today, we are not going to talk about these men and some women who consider themselves untouchable by law. Today, the sole focus is on the victims, their testimonials, their harrowing tales of enduring abuse and dominance, both physical and psychological, by the disgraced financier who died back in 2019. Let's go through a very important part of the released Epstein Files that has not made as many headlines as it should have. This is the US Department of Justice website with the Epstein Library. The journey of going through the files begins rather ironically because in the first step, the website asks you if you're over 18 years old. Ironical since the victims were not. Then as you scroll down, there is a section for DOJ disclosures. Clicking on it leads to a list of data sets, which has a whole tranche of documents. In this part of the whole Epstein saga, our focus is on data set number 3, this right here. There are numerous files here which contain handwritten notes of victim statements and statements from some individuals in the middle of this so-called supply chain of providing girls to and for Epstein. The notes are of officials from the New York field offices, as is evident from the first page of all the compiled documents. Let's take a look at the first document here dated May 2nd, 2019. There are several pointers and much of the information is redacted. But look at this one sentence at the end of the first page of these notes. All below 18 went to JE. JE here, of course, is Jeffrey Epstein. The next page has many other statements that jump out. Desperate time, running out of girls. Another one, JE did not want Spanish or dark girls. There's also a snippet of a conversation here between Epstein and some unknown person, and this is how it goes. Jeffrey Epstein says, "What are you doing? Why bringing me dark girl?" To which this person replies, "Bringing young girl." Epstein responds by saying, "Yeah, but not dark." On the next page, there is a remark noted which says that at one point someone, a third person, witnessed Epstein asking one of his victims for an ID because he wanted to make sure that she was under 18 years old. Under 18, not over. He wanted to confirm that she was a minor. And according to this person's statement in these notes to investigators, Epstein checked the age because someone whose name has been redacted, quote, messed up by bringing more older girls. Page 8 of this document, and remember we are talking about just one document till now. The 8th page has a list of photographs, with most of the girls identified as being 14 to 17 years of age. In the following pages, there are redacted photos of these young girls. There's also another common pattern emerging from these notes, which shows how deep and expansive this entire web was. There appear to be several people involved in bringing underage girls from vulnerable backgrounds to the late sex offender. Since their names are redacted, it's hard to tell how many of them were really involved and to what extent, and how many of them were initially victims themselves who brought in girls like themselves as an opportunity to earn some money and sustain their lives. We do know that this happened, as it has been made public by a few women involved in a docu-series. And they were victims first. But until they realized the extent of what exactly is happening, it was too late. Here's another file out of the 3 million pages, and this one is dated 31st July 2019. These are notes from what appear to be an interrogation of Epstein's victims, who appear to be accompanied by famed attorney Gloria Allred and a paralegal by the name of Sammy Wong. The assumption is on the basis of their names being mentioned in these notes. It's a detailed description of what this girl went through with her time dealing with Epstein, how he was so nice and kind, how he showed interest in her upbringing. It's in fact important to mention here that this victim was homeless, another case of a vulnerable background, which proves how Epstein's so-called interest was in fact a mechanism to control his targets, and how this kindness slowly escalated into uncomfortable situations of sexual misconduct, how he dug his claws into vulnerable girls with financial dependence on him and other psychological tactics. The interview goes into details of how he would make them feel special with money and gifts, but eventually how he would control everything, even what clothes they shopped for and wore. There are detailed descriptions of Ghislaine Maxwell as well, when one victim recalls as her being intimidating, cold, and not friendly. On page 13, there's a damning detail by one victim where she mentions 4 assaults before the age of 18, and it, in fact, was rape in 2 of these cases. At the end of this particular file also, there are several photographs in which Epstein is visible, but faces of victims have been redacted to protect them. This is just the tip of the iceberg. 2 files out of millions. And the victims say there is much more that has not been made public. The Justice Department, on its part, says that it has released everything, and the only files not published are either unrelated, duplicates, or had been withheld under deliberative process or attorney-client privilege, or because they depicted violence. That last part, depicted violence, raises so many questions on what we still do not know. And this is not even the extent of it. The cherry on the cake, folks, is this. The Justice Department said a few days ago that there is no evidence in these files that would require them to prosecute anyone else. The stories and horrors revealed in these files seems to suggest otherwise.